Oak Island has always been a place where history and mystery collide. For over 2 centuries, people have searched the small island off Nova Scotia for answers to puzzles that seem too big for such a tiny patch of land. Strange tunnels, hidden chambers, carved stones, and stories of buried treasure have kept the legend alive. Many theories have been suggested, from pirate gold to Templar secrets, and even the possibility that the Holy Grail or Ark of the Covenant could lie hidden beneath its soil. But recently, something completely unexpected has come to light. Among the coins, timbers, and fragments normally uncovered on the island, the team found something that seems to point in an entirely new direction: evidence of the ancient Romans. This discovery has shaken the Oak Island mystery at its core. For generations, the focus was on pirates, the Templars, or early European explorers. The idea that the Romans, an empire that fell nearly 1,500 years ago, could have reached North America is nothing short of extraordinary. Yet several artifacts suggest that this might indeed be the case. A mysterious sword recovered near the island, a coin that could date back more than 2,000 years, and even a centuries-old horseshoe are changing the way researchers look at Oak Island. These finds are raising one question that could alter history forever. Did ancient civilizations like the Romans cross the Atlantic long before Columbus set sail? The first artifact that set this theory into motion was a sword pulled from the waters near Oak Island. At first glance, it looked unlike anything the treasure hunters had seen before. It was heavy, ornate, and decorated with detailed engravings. Most striking of all was the image of Hercules carved into it. In Roman culture, Hercules represented strength, heroism, and divine favor. To find such a symbol in Nova Scotia seemed almost impossible. Could this sword really be proof that Roman explorers set foot in the New World? The team knew they could not jump to conclusions. Oak Island's history is filled with false leads and misinterpreted artifacts. Every find must be studied with care. To understand the sword, they brought it to experts at St. Mary's University in Halifax. There, Professor Miles McCallum, an archaeologist specializing in Roman history, studied the artifact closely. Under the bright lights of the lab, the details came into view. The design was convincing, and the craftsmanship seemed ancient. For a moment, it truly felt as if the island had given up a direct connection to Rome itself. But then subtle details told a different story. Professor McCallum explained that Roman swords of this type were normally made using a lost wax casting method. This technique created strong, single-piece weapons designed for use in battle. The Oak Island sword, however, showed signs of having been made in a two-part mold. This meant it was decorative, not functional. In other words, it may not have been a true Roman weapon, but rather a reproduction made centuries later. Some experts even suggested it could have been crafted in the 18th or 19th century, created to mimic the style of Roman designs. This revelation was disappointing for some, but it did not end the mystery. Even if the sword was a replica, why was it found near Oak Island? How did such an object end up in Nova Scotia at all? Could it have been brought over by an explorer who admired Roman history? Or was it left behind by someone with knowledge of ancient civilizations? While it might not have been carried by a Roman soldier, the sword still carried meaning. It symbolized strength and legend, and it hinted at the possibility that other, more authentic relics could still be buried on Oak Island. Soon after, another discovery pushed the Roman theory even further. On Lot 5 of the island, the team uncovered a small copper coin. At first, it looked ordinary, weathered by time and earth. But when it was tested, scientists realized it was anything but ordinary. Using advanced analysis, the coin was shown to contain copper, tin, lead, silver, and a trace of arsenic. This was a crucial clue. The use of arsenic in coin making was typical of pieces made before the 1500s.
This meant the coin was at least 500 years old, possibly far older. Even more surprising was the design stamped on the coin. The markings and style matched Roman minting techniques, and experts dated it to somewhere between 300 BC and 600 AD. A Roman coin buried on Oak Island, waiting centuries to be found. If genuine, this was the type of evidence that could completely change what we know about history. It would mean that explorers from Europe may have crossed the Atlantic nearly 1,500 years before Columbus set sail. The implications were almost too incredible to believe. Did Roman sailors make their way to North America? Were they blown off course on a voyage of conquest? Or was the coin brought later, perhaps hidden or carried by the Knights Templar, who may have treasured relics of Rome and transported them across oceans? The possibilities were endless, but one thing was clear: Oak Island was now linked to one of the greatest empires in human history. The discovery of the coin also reminded the team of their earlier travels to Portugal, where they had seen Roman roads and Templar strongholds. They noticed similarities between stone pathways in Portugal and the mysterious stone structures uncovered in Oak Island's swamp. Could the same hands that built roads in Europe have passed their knowledge to those who built pathways on Oak Island? And could the coin be a missing piece in this transatlantic puzzle? As stunning as the coin was, another artifact soon added even more intrigue: a medieval horseshoe found buried near the swamp. Unlike typical farm horseshoes, this one was designed for a smaller riding horse. Experts suggested it could date back as far as the 1400s, long before horses were recorded in Nova Scotia. This meant whoever brought the horse to Oak Island was here with purpose, organization, and wealth. The horseshoe hinted at explorers, commanders, or even knights making their way to this mysterious island centuries before official history records their presence. With the sword, the coin, and the horseshoe together, a pattern began to emerge. Each artifact, on its own, was extraordinary, but taken as a whole, they suggested something far greater: that Oak Island had been visited, shaped, and engineered by civilizations with deep ties to Europe and perhaps even the ancient world. The swamp's carefully laid stone paths and ramps now looked less like natural accidents and more like deliberate engineering projects. Could the island have been designed as a hidden outpost, a place to store relics or treasure brought across the sea? These discoveries demand that we ask bigger questions. Was Oak Island part of a secret network of exploration? Did ancient Romans, Carthaginians, or medieval Templars cross the Atlantic in search of new lands or safe places to hide sacred treasures? Could the famed money pit itself be part of a much larger system of tunnels built not by pirates but by ancient engineers following traditions from Europe? What is certain is that Oak Island's mystery is not just about gold. It is about history itself. Each artifact, whether it is a sword, a coin, or a horseshoe, points to stories that stretch across oceans and centuries. These are not random finds. They are pieces of a vast puzzle, a reminder that human history is full of journeys, secrets, and daring acts that textbooks rarely cover. The presence of a Roman coin on Oak Island is one of those discoveries that forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew. For centuries, historians have taught that the Romans never crossed the Atlantic, that their empire extended through Europe into the Middle East and across North Africa, but never beyond. Yet this tiny coin whispers a different story. If even one Roman ship did make it across the vast ocean, then history as we know it would have to be rewritten. Suddenly, Oak Island would not just be a place of buried treasure, but the site of one of humanity's greatest unsolved voyages. The theory of Roman exploration is not without support. Ancient records describe the seafaring abilities of Roman traders, who navigated the Mediterranean and even reached as far as Britain and Scandinavia. Roman ships were not small fishing vessels. They were massive, with the ability to carry tons of cargo and hundreds of men. Some were sturdy enough to withstand storms and long journeys. Could it be possible that one of these ships ventured farther than we ever imagined, carried westward by the winds and currents until it reached
Nova Scotia? If so, then Oak Island might have served as a landing point, a safe harbor where these explorers could hide their treasures or supplies. It could even have been a staging ground for further expeditions. Some researchers believe that if the Romans did arrive, they might not have come looking for new lands, but for resources. The area around Nova Scotia is rich in timber, fish, and possibly even precious metals. For an empire hungry for expansion, such resources would have been valuable. But there's another layer to this theory, one that pulls Oak Island even deeper into a web of mystery: the connection between the Romans and the Knights Templar. The Templars were known to have preserved ancient knowledge, relics, and treasures. They admired Rome's power and often saw themselves as inheritors of its traditions. Could the coin found on Oak Island have been transported here not by Romans themselves, but by the Templars, who carried such artifacts across the ocean centuries later? This possibility gains strength when we look at Oak Island's architecture. The carefully cut stones, the man-made flood tunnels, and the strange swamp structures all suggest the work of skilled builders. These are not the random efforts of pirates burying stolen treasure. They look more like the results of long-term planning and incredible engineering knowledge. The Templars, who were both warriors and builders, would have had both the skill and the resources to create such structures. And if they carried Roman relics with them, perhaps as symbols of their heritage or faith, then those objects could easily have ended up buried on Oak Island. Let us not forget the horseshoe discovered on the island. Horses were essential to knights. A riding horse meant more than transportation. It meant status, mobility, and power. The presence of such a horseshoe in a place where horses were not supposed to exist yet is a clue too important to ignore. If knights or early explorers rode horses on Oak Island, then the site was not just visited, but occupied. People lived, worked, and moved on the island with purpose. The swamp itself adds even more mystery to the Roman and Templar theories. At first glance, it looks natural, but evidence shows that it has been heavily altered by human hands. Stones were placed in patterns, ramps were built, and strange pathways stretch across its waters. If this swamp was engineered, then why? Was it designed to hide something beneath it? Was it meant to serve as a barrier, protecting secrets below from ever being uncovered? If so, then the swamp could hold answers to the greatest questions of all. Who came to Oak Island, and what did they leave behind? When we step back and look at these discoveries, the sword, the coin, the horseshoe, and the swamp structures, they seem to weave together into one larger story. It is a story not just about Oak Island, but about global exploration, ancient empires, and the hidden currents of history. It is a reminder that history is not always neat, not always confined to the pages of books. Sometimes objects buried in the earth tell us stories that scholars could never have predicted. Skeptics will say that the Roman connection is impossible, that the sword was a fake, that the coin was dropped by a traveler centuries later. And perhaps they are right. Oak Island has been full of false leads and hoaxes before. But even so, the question remains, why do so many strange artifacts keep appearing here? Why does this small island, no larger than 140 acres, continue to produce evidence that challenges history itself? There must be a reason. Some believe Oak Island was deliberately chosen as a hiding place. Its remote location, surrounded by treacherous waters, would have made it the perfect spot to conceal something of great importance. Whether that was gold, relics, or knowledge, the builders of Oak Island wanted to ensure it remained hidden. The flood tunnels and traps are proof enough of that. No ordinary treasure would require such protection. Only something priceless, perhaps even sacred, would warrant that level of secrecy. This is why the Roman discovery matters so much. If the coin is real, and if it truly dates back to the empire, then it may be the first link in a chain that connects Oak Island to one of the greatest civilizations in history. And if the Templars did indeed preserve and transport Roman artifacts, then Oak Island could be the final chapter in a story that began thousands of years ago on the shores of the Mediterranean. The more we consider these theories, the more Oak Island seems less like a place of chance and more like a chosen location, a deliberate hiding ground for history's most precious secrets. Whether it was the Romans, the Templars, or some other group entirely, someone with great power and knowledge came here long before modern explorers, and they left behind clues. Clues that we are only now beginning to understand. The presence of a Roman coin on Oak Island is one of those discoveries that forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew. For centuries, historians have. The Carthaginian theory is another fascinating piece of the Oak Island puzzle. Carthage, Rome's great rival in the ancient world, was based in North Africa and thrived as a maritime powerhouse. Carthaginian ships were legendary for their strength, speed, and endurance. Some historians believe they ventured far beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, into the vast Atlantic Ocean. Could it be possible that Carthaginian sailors reached the shores of North America long before Columbus or the Vikings? There are whispers of ancient writings suggest Carthage guarded secret trade routes that may have extended across the ocean to unknown lands. These routes would have been kept hidden to protect valuable resources. If the Carthaginians did come to Nova Scotia, then Oak Island could have been one of their hidden outposts, a place where they stored wealth, supplies, or even sacred relics. It is not impossible to imagine Carthaginian sailors choosing a small, remote island like Oak Island as a safe location to hide their treasures, far from the reach of Rome. This theory becomes even more intriguing when we remember that after Rome defeated Carthage in the Punic Wars, Carthaginian survivors may have fled across the seas to escape Roman rule. If so, they could have carried their most valuable treasures with them: gold, silver, and sacred artifacts from their temples. Some suggest these refugees may have ended up on Oak Island, burying their treasures deep underground and constructing tunnels and traps to ensure their survival remained a secret. Adding to this mystery are the Norse voyages. Long before Columbus, Norse explorers like Leif Erikson are believed to have reached North America around the year 1000. In fact, evidence of a Norse settlement,
Island. Soon after, another discovery pushed the Roman theory even further. On Lot 5 of the island, the team uncovered a small copper coin. At first it looked ordinary, weathered by time and earth, but when it was tested, scientists realized it was anything but ordinary. Using advanced analysis, the coin was shown to contain copper, tin, lead, silver, and a trace of arsenic. This was a crucial clue. The use of arsenic in coin-making was typical of pieces made before the 1500s. This meant the coin was at least 500 years old, possibly far older. Even more surprising was the design stamped on the coin. The markings and style matched Roman minting techniques, and experts dated it to somewhere between 300 BC and 600 AD. A Roman coin buried on Oak Island, waiting centuries to be found. If genuine, this was the type of evidence that could completely change what we know about history. It would mean that explorers from Europe may have crossed the Atlantic nearly 1,500 years before Columbus set sail. The implications were almost too incredible to believe. Did Roman sailors make their way to North America? Were they blown off course on a voyage of conquest? Or was the coin brought later, perhaps hidden or carried by the Knights Templar, who may have treasured relics of Rome and transported them across oceans? The possibilities were endless. But one thing was clear: Oak Island was now linked to one of the greatest empires in human history. The discovery of the coin also reminded the team of their earlier travels to Portugal, where they had seen Roman roads and Templar strongholds. They noticed similarities between stone pathways in Portugal and the mysterious stone structures uncovered in Oak Island's swamp. Could the same hands that built roads in Europe have passed their knowledge to those who built pathways on Oak Island? And could the coin be a missing piece in this transatlantic puzzle? As stunning as the coin was, another artifact soon